And finally, we want to say the other way to look at it is that you can directly counter threats, both adversarial, accidental, environmental. But we also need to protect information throughout its life cycle. So what are the controls you can put in place throughout, from creating it securely to transmitting, processing, and storing it, right through to destroying it. And again, think about not just digital information here. If you've got bits of paper hanging around an office, are they being securely shredded, disposed of in a kind of a secure waste facility? But even the hard drives, are they being properly degaussed, destroyed? So again, not going to talk through every single control there, but lots to think through in terms of we can counter direct threats, but then we need to think, okay, how do we protect that whole life cycle?
Rich, just wanted to throw something in here as well. As a bit of a governance geek, I wonder if this sits alongside that, or should be, because I guess I'm curious about the sort of reason for going through this, because it's quite an investigative, intense process, I would imagine. But is that the kind of thing that would be activated by those traditional, if that's the word, governance processes and those steering groups, etc., or is it tend to sit outside that because it's whether it's in response to a breach or it's just good preparation? I don't know. Where would it sit in that?
Yeah, so you're kind of saying, what does the whole approach to protecting the crown jewels, you mean, does it kind of sit within existing structures, or is it something?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess the starting point for it, I don't know if it would come out of that sort of because that that governance is generally business as usual. It is how we organize our department, etc., and your strategy plays out via those things. But I wonder if sometimes discovering a crown jewels because it sounds like quite a big job, and you'd hope an organization knows some of that already, but I wasn't sure if it was, you need to adjust that governance process to take account of this, or it tends to be a one-off project that feeds into a lot of work that again rattles through that governance process.
Yeah, so I think the top level answer is it needs to be part of those governance processes. Like, you can't do any of this if you don't have a governance system in place to understand the need to do this and to make sure it is happening and assure it. And a lot of it isn't particularly new, right? So you still need to do, you need risk-based assessments. You need to do risk assessments. You need to kind of go out and do the very basics around information management and classification and working out, how sensitive certain bits of information are. These are the very basic building blocks of security, right? If you don't do that, it's really hard to get anything right. So what I would say is, you probably want more of a focus on the control side and the assurance side. Once you've identified crown jewels, that might require a bit of extra work, but it should still sit within that governance process.
Yeah.
What I would say is protecting the crown jewels would hopefully drive better practice in everything else you do around security. It's like, okay, prioritize this stuff first, make sure we've got all the controls we need in place. But absolutely, if you can apply similar thinking to everything else, to the merely critical and important information, that still works. But I mean, to back that up, there's a reason we kind of stuck with this wording around, alter the wording slightly to fit with the NIST CSF. So we know that, for instance, people are using the CSF as a kind of a structure, a governance structure, a framework to think about their security controls. So make sure if you're using that kind of language, fit this in there. And from our point of view, from what the ISF offers, we're able to map all of these various parts to controls in the standard of good practice. Right, so it definitely fits in with existing structures. It's just a way of kind of focusing and approaching on what's most critical to the business.
And is there a kind of lifetime for these things? Because I guess crown jewels will change. So I guess it's not one of the things, hey, we did it 5 years ago, we still know what our crown jewels are. I mean, that presumably you need to update this quite regularly too.
Yeah, so the answer is always it depends. Yes, there is a lifetime. It will depend on each crown jewel. Okay. So if we think about AI systems, they might have only been implemented a couple of years ago, and they might have only become a crown jewel last year, and you might have given up on the project in a year and they're no longer a crown jewel. So it's kind of a constant rethinking of what is currently that valuable to our organization, because some things will become less valuable, some will become more. I would suggest that process is probably speeding up these days with the kind of the speed at which new technology is advancing and new services are coming out. But it's for each, you kind of need to consider it for each crown jewel that you identify. which is, I think it reinforces that point. This isn't a one and done kind of single process. This is something you need to think about kind of continuously. Okay, so I just wanted to finish up with kind of three things to focus on and to remember. So first and foremost, yeah, absolutely get leadership buy-in. So executives are the best place to identify critical processes. Alongside the report we just released last week, we also have an executive view, so ISF members can get access to that and share it with their senior leaders. And that really, if the report looks at how to protect crown jewels, the executive view is why. So really get senior leaders to think about, okay, this is what's important to our business, but also tries and prompts them to think, how can you help security people identify the crown jewels? Most of the rest of the approach we put in is kind of, right, okay, over to security. You're the ones that can deal with the actual protection processes. But senior leadership, most importantly, has a part to play in identifying what's most critical. But then also kind of, they can then kind of foster that culture of security and awareness that I was talking about right at the beginning. That often that culture comes from the top. So if you can get security leaders, or business leaders to understand what's absolutely critical, that might, again, hopefully prompt them to start thinking about, okay, how do we build a better culture through the business? The second thing I want to mention here is, consider that full range of potential threats. Not just hackers anymore that you need to worry about. Accidents, environmental incidents can have just as bad an impact. If it just comes down to losing access to these processes and information. When we think about measures, controls to mitigate threats, we've talked about a few different technology controls in there, but absolutely think about people and process as well. The classic, human-centered security that we think about, just not clicking on links that look a bit dodgy. If it's too good to be true, don't do it. Even more so when it comes to a crown jewel. Do you know that all the people that are interacting with, that have access to these crown jewels, do they appreciate how important they are? Do they have training and awareness and understanding of what they need to do to keep them secure? And are the right processes in place to help them do that? I think it's a really important part, and sometimes goes a bit overlooked when we talk from a technology point of view. So that's the kind of point I'd want to leave on, and hopefully that sets up the rest of our webinar week, talking about security issues. At the center of all of this are, in the end, people. We're the ones that create these crown jewels and have to look after them. So let's get some good habits in place.
Yep. Thanks, Rich. Illuminating. I think I learned a lot there. I don't know if you got a final remark, because from my point of view, looking at emerging risks and the threat horizon report, a lot of people are really worried. I mean, certainly, I think we're living through unprecedented times, and I wonder if identifying the crown jewels has become more of an issue for members. I mean, I guess that's why part of the reason we revisited this research, expanded it. But I just wondered, is there a sort of final? Is it more organisations are doing it because they feel they will be called on to identify and protect those things more in the near future? So definitely lots of people are interested. I would say most organizations that I've spoken to have started this in some format, or they've tried to get going, or some are quite mature along that pathway, and have been doing this for a while. So we're not starting completely from scratch or telling big organizations something they haven't thought about. This is something people have thought about for a while. But yes, I think minds are probably being focused, not even necessarily in the security team, but at an executive level, by all the all the events and the incidents that we're seeing happening. Over the last 10 years, you have to look at the World Economic Forum's kind of risk reports on an annual basis, right? Cybersecurity it's just creeping up there in a list of biggest risks to organizations. And, I think understanding what is absolutely critical to the business and how, if that falls over, you kind of lose the ability to do business and operate in some senses. That's really focused the mind on, okay, we need to protect what is most critical. Yeah. And I think that's what we said, the title of this webinar is, protecting what matters most. And that's, I think it really does go to the core of what security is trying to do, right? We're there to support the business, to maintain resilience. Yeah.
And yeah, this is the first most important thing to protect.
Yeah,
about everything else. So I think that's recent events. The fact that nation states will often target large organizations now probably does focus the mind and has made people think, right, let's just get back and check, are we really securing what matters most?
Yeah. I'd imagine as well for a lot of organizations, finding out what their crown jewels are is a bit of a surprise, because they probably have very different ideas until they do the work. And the questions we've got so far, thank you for sending those in, are definitely on that theme. One from Kartik at the NN Group. Don't you think DORA will aid in identifying the mission critical applications?
Yeah, is the quick answer, hopefully. I think I'd quite like to see regulation coming in that starts to, it might not talk in exactly the same language, but is getting people to focus on what's most important to their business. So yeah, that obviously kind of DORA is only going to apply to certain types of organization. But yes, the short answer is yeah. If I would say we kind of need all the levers that we can to get people to do this. So if regulation points people in that direction, then yeah, absolutely go for it. Then hopefully what we can offer from the ISF is an approach to actually do it. So yeah, DORA can say you need to do this, and we're going to give you a bit of a kind of a risk-focused view on this is how to do it.
Yeah, it's a bit of guidance. Next question, similar to kind of theme from Jan at BMW Group. In large enterprises, can the business units determine crown jewels on their own, or is it necessary for security to govern and steer this process?
Yeah, so I think I would say it's preferable that business units define what the crown jewels are. Security can provide support, give them something to think about and say, have you thought of this? But ultimately, yeah, security is there to support the business. It's not there to tell the business what it should and shouldn't be doing. So it's in this sense, it's got to take the lead. The business units know what is critical to them, or they should do. They should have a better idea than security. As I said, I think the problem is when there are multiple business units competing for that, almost for the attention of security. They can over-identify. I've heard some people say, well, marketing give us, a list of 5 crown jewels, and you kind of step back and say, hey, with all respect to our marketing colleagues, anything from the marketing department is unlikely to be a crown jewel, because the business will be able to operate without it. I'm not saying it's not important. You won't be able to get your messages out there, if no marketing services are available. But you still will be able to sell things. If you're in manufacturing, you'll still be able to buy things. So it's like that's quite a simple analogy or way of looking at it. But when you're thinking about crown jewels, you need someone who can look across those business units and understand, okay, what is absolutely critical, to stop the business going under, essentially. Everything else we can build back up later.
Yep. And Jan adds another point, which is really, really interesting. Actually, definitely got me thinking. Was asking if it'd be nice if companies could compare their crown jewels, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's emerged from the research and the conversations you had with members, whether you got the sense that someone's crown jewels look like someone else's crown jewels, or actually they're very different, whether it's a process, whether it's an application, a service, I don't know.
Yeah. So in some senses, this is the beauty of the ISF. So members are able to talk to each other, and we've run workshops as part of this research. And they will, yes, kind of compare and contrast. Obviously, yes, not in the level of detail of this is exactly the process we use, but yeah, that's where we get our lists from, right? Or kind of our examples are coming from members. So yeah, they'll be able to compare and contrast types of information, types of crown jewels, and we've updated them based on that. So yeah, I mean, the ISF is a good place to do that, because the meetings we have operate under those kind of Chatham House rules, where people are able to share fairly safely, knowing that they won't get out of the room. But yes, they're not likely to go into huge detail, because obviously they're crown
jewels. Yes, exactly. I'll look at my crown jewels. Hang on. Yes, that would be showing them in too much detail would be kind of get in the way of the point of the exercise, I suppose. One question I did want to ask as well: if this is all complicated by AI, does that make it easier or worse? Because I guess I get the feeling that at the moment a lot of organisations are in that finding out stage with AI. They're doing some projects; it's starting to have an effect on the way they operate, but are they crown jewels yet? I don't know, but I wasn't sure if that came up during the research.
Yes, it came up. Yeah, And the answer is yes, probably in a lot of cases. It's part of the reason we looked at the update. More and more organizations are using AI systems. I think we're seeing more data come back in now saying some of those, a lot of those deployments aren't going as well as hoped. Sometimes a lot of AI deployments don't necessarily work as hoped, but that's not to say they're not important. And if they're starting to overtake or take over some key business processes, then yes, they're going to be considered crown jewels. And obviously, that requires then an extra level of thinking and kind of control to put around those AI systems. It is also complicated. AI complicates things in many ways. So there's the systems that you're running. You need to protect them if the data that underpins them is indeed classified as a crown jewel. We also have to think about AI, adversarial AI, the fact that it's kind of making some of these adversarial attacks a lot, well, they're just more able to scale them from an attacking point of view. And it's not there quite yet, but we've looked in Threat Horizon what happens in a few years when you get real kind of AI-based malware, the impact that could kind of have. And on the flip side of that, then we have to start thinking about AI in defense. So one of the key controls you might start to look at, there's plenty of caveats with defensive AI systems, as in there's no point having them if you haven't got other basics right, like your information management, classification, identity and access management down. If they aren't right, then you don't need to worry about AI because it will just overcomplicate things. But yeah, it's gonna help as well as hinder, I guess.
Yeah. Similar kind of questions from Ivan on identification from Ivan at Volvo, and about a distinction between critical and mission critical. Are both crown jewels, or do you reserve the title crown jewel for those information assets that, when compromised, jeopardize one's ability to execute their mission? I guess that it's the ones that if you cut them off, everything stops.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. I think you've probably hit the nail on the head with the second part of the question. Critical, we are talking mission critical. So yes, however you classify things, we're talking about the most important information assets. So that's not to say critical information still isn't critical, but it's okay, what would actually jeopardize your ability to do business? That's mission. That's the level we're talking about. So protect these things first. What is literally absolutely mission critical.
Yeah. And then a bit of a provocative question from Paul at Arm Holdings. Surely security already knows what the crown jewels are. Just look at the profit and loss account from finance. What makes the most money? Surely that's the thing, isn't it? Or is it more complicated than that?
It depends. It could be. Sometimes you'd hope, in a good relationship, when there's a good relationship between security and the business, then security should be able to have an idea of what is a crown jewel from the profit and loss side of things. And it depends what kind of organization you're in as well. I think in finance, for instance, that might be fairly obvious sometimes. There's no harm double checking that from a security point of view. And I'd still want I'd want the lead to come from the business on that side. Also, because I think that's just good practice. The security team should be talking regularly with the business side to understand what's critical to them. So yeah, it's a good point. Some things you'd hope would be fairly obvious. So maybe if you're going to start a conversation about identifying crown jewels, then you could present examples and say, we think this is critical. Just confirm that for us. But what are we missing? From a process side of the point of view.
Because I guess as well, you've got to protect those things that might bring in the next big revenue generator as well. Yeah. So if you just concentrate on the stuff you sell now, where does your future
streams come from? Plans for new products, M&A. If you're looking to get into a new sector or develop something new or come up with a new product or plan, absolutely, yeah. You might not have a view on that from security at all. Yeah. And again, there's sensitive stuff here. One of the things we'll hear from members is people don't tell them about their crown jewels because they're that sensitive. And again, I've done some work on security and M&A in the past, and we know security teams just, for reasons of sensitivity, aren't going to get involved early in the process in most M&A processes, right? They're just, you're not going to be told because there's 4 or 5 people in the business know that this deal is on the cards. So it's not necessarily a case that security needs to be involved or at every stage of those processes, but they might want to be able to give the people who are involved some advice for when these things do happen. How can they help, or how can they help themselves?
Yeah. I've got a provocative question of my own, if that's all right. So a lot of the protecting the crown jewels work is about identifying that, I think, as you call that, minimum viable unit, that minimum viable business.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's any risk here that, someone higher up in the business might go, hang on, if we can survive with just this, short stream here, why don't we just fire everybody else and shut everything else down? If that's the core of our business, let's just do that. I don't know if that ever came up at all.
Not so much, because I think you're talking about survival versus profitability and success. So yeah, I think probably when we're talking about protecting the crown jewels, it's first and foremost survival. It's resilience. It's how do we keep going. Everything. The importance of security is supporting the business to be successful. Now, everything beyond crown jewels will obviously, well, you can't be successful without survival in the first place. Make sure you can continue to operate as a very bare minimum. But then, as I said, hopefully, if you get the system right of protect, what helps us to just keep going, keep operating, that then supports everything else that we do that generates income, generates profit and success. So I'd be a little worried if I saw people say, we're only going to protect what's most useful because it's not worth it. It's a risk-based question to have at every point, right? What are the controls we need around this process, depending on its,
part of the reason I asked that question is because obviously there's a lot of chatter about AI and what that's doing to workforces at the moment. And some very far out radical suggestions are that, sure, you just need, some senior executives plus a load of AI employees, and there's your business right there. But that isn't really a business, because I think part of the research as well, I would imagine, was about what makes companies work, and as you say, a lot of that is people, and people in not quite ways you might understand. So I think that's a sort of curious aspect of this, of the way business works.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good summary of it, and also AI is still a difficult one. I think it's still so much up in the air. I think people want it to work a certain way, but they're finding in practice it runs into trouble, and you're always kind of going to need some human intervention. So until that settles almost, or people work out what the value of is using it, then there'll be a bit of turbulence, I think.
Yeah. Indeed. Another question, another point from Paul. 3 criteria which have actually worked in identifying a business product service to be classified as a crown jewel. Revenue is one of them. Cost of a bad day, and whether it's on the critical path to strategic objectives. Revenue, I guess, fairly often. Cost of a bad day, how much it damages your operations, I guess. Critical path to strategic, whether what's its future, on those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
And then just another question from Ivan on Volvo. When will the supporting documents be released? Because I think this initial release of stuff is, there's more to come, isn't there?
Yes, so good question. So for ISF members, the updated report and the executive view are now available on ISF Live, so you can go and get access to them right now. We are also updating an implementation guide, which is kind of a more step-by-step process through. We put together a protection approach, and that's likely to be in the new year when we get around to that. If anyone is attending Congress in Prague in a few weeks, I'll be running a workshop to kind of help people input into that development of the implementation guide. So please join us there.
I think we've got time for one more question from Mateus at Orbia. When you identify a crown jewel application, does that just mean the application itself or the underlying infrastructure to ensure consistent classification and compliance? I guess it depends on the organization.
Yeah, but it's also a really good question. So we're talking about information, right? So when we define crown jewel as an information asset, so it's the information that underpins whatever it is, the application or the infrastructure. So I guess it depends on the way you want to look at it. We would identify processes first and then understand the information that underpins that process. If you could also use, what application support that process, what infrastructure supports that process, and then what's the information that underpins that. So I wouldn't necessarily be tagging from a security or an information security point of view. We might not necessarily tag infrastructure or applications as mission critical. It's the information underneath them that we're calling crown jewels. But they're key things to understand, to identify, what is mission critical, what you do actually need to control and support. So it's not sure if that's answered fully the question, but we're thinking most about the information, think about processes, applications, infrastructure, to understand what information you need to control and support and how.
Right. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Rich. Any final remarks? Anything else? I guess it just sort of, we're in the process of releasing. Well, the paper's been released. Got some more to come. Got the workshops at Congress, but yeah, I guess people can reach out to you as well for more help if they need to.
Absolutely, yeah. So the research is ongoing. Like I mentioned, we've got further deliverables to come. So and even if well, we're always happy to talk, even if there wasn't further research coming. So if you have kind of further questions, thoughts, good, bad feedback, let us know here, questions, or you can get directly in touch with me via that email address there.
Yep.
Yeah, always happy to talk.
Thank you, Richard. I think that pretty much wraps up this first session. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us this morning. If we didn't get to your question, and there were some great ones there, feel free to reach out. Richard's contact details are on screen now. So yeah, just drop us a line as well. We look forward to continuing the conversation with members on ISF Live, also Hyperite, which is another social media system platform we're setting up to have some of those conversations with members, get some people together in those particular communities. If you're not part of that, head to the attachment section below to learn more about those kinds of things. And while you are there looking around those materials, please leave us your feedback. We appreciate your thoughts, curious how we're doing. Are these the types of topics you want us to explore? Do we want different formats? Those kinds of things, let us know. And don't forget to join us at 11 tomorrow for our second showcase session, which we're doing on agentic AI. Why autonomy is its greatest strength and biggest weakness. It sounds good. You'll see me there as well, and I shall hope to see you there too. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Cheers.